I don't know, I get that feeling at times. I often feel like that sometimes I wish we hadn't started it. I don't know. When it's moonlight on the Danube, I'll always dream of you. When the night is still with a silent thrill of yearning too, how your love comes smiling through, 'twas the only love I knew. For when it's moonlight over the Danube, I'll dream of you.
Congratulations on 90 years. You look all of... No, I won't say it.
16.
16. 16, and we hope that you'll plant it in your plot, because you, as we have reminded people previously, were the original, or one of the original, adopter plotters of Cremorne Point.
Yeah.
And all these trees, with very few exceptions, we've planted, you know. Just like a bush track.
It is.
Lex used to call himself the earth moving equipment, and I was a gardener. He used to jog right from the end of Shell Cove right around to the end of Mosman Bay. And I used to see him when I was going down to get the ferry. And I was running down of the ferry one morning, and as he was running along, we almost collided. And he stepped back and he said, "Oh, I'm very sorry, that's the first words he ever said."
I met these two people around about 1966. And it was one of the best days of my life, I guess.
Oh, come over here, love.
They don't make people like these anymore.
Lex and I were married in a lovely little church in Alice Springs. Well, we didn't tell a soul. We just left the motel and we went up, and the minister, David, picked us up. They gave us a marriage certificate, and I said, "Darling, put it in your pocket." And the minister said, "Can you trust him?" I said, "Well, after 14 years, I think so." Lex was one of the kindest, most generous people you would ever wish to meet. He really was. And a friend said, "Well, if we got married down here, we would have had to hire the town hall." No, because he was well liked. Because I met Lex in 58 and it was in 59 that we started the garden about, might have been about September, something like that. We did find in one section, in a midden, there were some shells, but there was a chap we came down to do with from the council, looking at places like that, and this midden, and he said, "Don't disturb it, leave it as it is." We just put soil over it. I'm not sure of the tribe, whether it was the Camarugals or who, and they used to camp there because it was sort of a cave. There were about 3 or 4 big caves there, but we found quite a lot of things, but we didn't, rocks that had been smoothed down, you know, to make sort of little axes and that, but we buried them all. Anything we found like that, shells, big shells like that they would eat out of, I suppose, and big oyster shells. And they were all buried in the garden.
Camaragal people called the place around Ruby's garden Walwarra Jiang, but they were being pushed off their country as early as the 1790s. In 1833, 86 acres around Walwarra Jiang were given to James Robertson, and the tip of the peninsula became known as Robertson's Point. But the strip of foreshore land around the point was retained for public purposes. This would become Cremorne Point Reserve. Lex and Ruby's garden is the legacy of this early reservation. Once you get down into her garden, you are hidden. I mean, there's so much foliage there, and there are so many tracks, and every track has got a name. They named them, and every corner's got a name. Just amazing.
Lex used to jog around the reserve and each morning and swim in the rock pool down in Mosman Bay. And one morning an elephant's ear bulb floated past, and he took it out of the pool and he put it between the roots of an old coral tree growing on the edge of the path. And after about a week, he said to me, "That's got a shoot coming out of it." So I got some dirt and put around it, and that's how it started. But this is where the first one was planted. There was an old coral tree here, and Lex used to swim in the rock bay along the little rock pool there.
And this is called Sue's Circle. Sue lives in there. Yeah. And so that's Sue's Circle. And then over there's Sue's Walk. And beyond that again, Amanda Avenue. Amanda's Sue's daughter.
Right.
Come down here. This is from Julie's garden, look. See these? They're marguerites. We had no idea that we'd grow, but we gradually cleared bit by bit, and then I had retired from work and Lex was semi-retired, so we used to go down, you know, a couple of days a week, and we worked very hard in it because there were huge holes there, but that was good because all the beer bottles and cans and you name it, the kitchen sink. Peter, this was a rubbish tip. It came right down over your head and went out into the bay.
Oh.
Went right out into the bay there.
Yes, I've taken things out of all rubbish. This was rubbish tip. And mattress, refrigerator, TV, radio. It spanned about, well, only a couple of houses where the tip was. And it had everything in it, everything. And Lex, the bathtub was right down on the edge of the water, and it disappeared one day because it had rusted, the plug had rusted in. Lex tried to pull the plug out, but it was rusted in. And with the rain and everything, it filled, and one day it floated off somewhere. And here, this used to drop down. It was a sheer drop down. And we put all the bottles here, and then we put all the weeds. We used to say to people, the gardens, don't throw your weeds out, give them to us. Look at the shape of that tree fern. These are the very oldest ones, the ones behind it, the eldest there, and then these and these. Yes, well, they'd be in their 40s now, and they were only little ones, and we used to, you'd find them along the gutters and walking around the reserve. But they'd be only about that high, or only have a couple of little leaves on them. We'd bring them around and plant them. There's over 150 now. And this one we bought. I bought a couple there when I've been to Face and that, and these three I bought. The residents at the time, they made it into the pool. Well, if you go down there, you can see it along. And the residents, 100 years ago, put rocks around. And we used to, Ruby and I would come down here at about 5 o'clock during the daytime and have a beer. And there was nothing there, so we built that bed up with empty cans and bottles, and we called it West's Row.
And here, there's a cave goes in underneath. And I was standing here one day, and I went down to my hip in the hole, and there were hundreds and hundreds of bricks here.
And we didn't know what to do with them, you know, get all out, all around. And so that's where they went, in the hole. Because they're all caves in underneath there. If the explorers came and dug it all out, they'd find big caves. And not being as young as I used to be, I can't sort of keep it the way I used to, but around further it's much better. This was a big hole, and the water used to tear down the path and come racing down here. It used to take all the soil with it. There was a big hole here, and that's where we put mattresses, old mattresses and all different things we found. Peter, I came straight down across here, and I finished up by hitting my shoulder on that rock. And it dislocated my shoulder and broke my arm there, and they couldn't set it. I only could wear it in a thing. And I used to sleep on the floor.
This is Ruby's roost here. Yeah. And in about 5-10 years, this will be really beautiful. It's a lovely corner, this.
This was a sheer drop down there, and we built it up, and I put agapanthus and clivias, and the clivias grow in the shade. They like the shade, but the agapanthus like the sun. It's reclaiming it. And this, the cliffs were there, and it was really dangerous, you know, when you see the kiddies running around. This has been here since the garden started. Look how it's going right up to the top. And Lex said to me one day, if you extend it any more, I'm leaving home.
Ruby and Lex were not the first to create a public garden at Cremorne Point. In fact, the suburb took its name from Cremorne Gardens in London. In the 1850s, the new harbourside pleasure ground on Cremorne Point attracted crowds to fireworks and masked balls. By the 1880s, it was a more genteel Victorian picnic ground where people came by ferry to enjoy the view.
My mother was a great gardener. We had a lovely garden. I've always loved gardening. I grew up on an orchard at Doncaster in Victoria, which is about, I think it'd be 30 k's from the city, and it was country then. And we grew stone fruit mostly, peaches and plums and all that sort of thing, and pears. My grandfather got the land when he came out from Switzerland in the 1800s, and after he died, Dad carried on with it, you see. And I grew up there. I was there till I was 18. I remember when the old first 3-model Ford went away, we chased it up the road. One of our neighbours bought it and we beat it. No, we had the horse and wagon, and Dad used to take the fruit into the market. There were a lot then, horse and wagons, and then gradually the trucks came along. When I was about 11, 12, I had my adenoids out and then another operation. And they were so lovely to me at the hospital, and I made up my mind I wanted to be a nurse, but of course the depression came, and I went out as a, well, they call them nannies now. I went out and looked after a little baby in a pram and a couple of preschool kiddies. Then when the war came, the first year I went into where they were making precision instruments and spark plugs and that. Then I joined the army. I was in the Avars, and I was in the army for about 3 or 4 months, and I went to Darwin. They wanted about 30 girls to go and open the barracks at Adelaide River, which is about 80 miles south of Darwin. So 28 of us went up, and we went up on the Gann, and it was marooned this side of the Fink River for over a week. Well, there's a shoe store up at Cremorne I managed. So I managed one at Lane Cove, Mosman, Spit Junction, and Cremorne. I think I came here in '54. I came to visit a friend above the old Cremorne Wharf, and they took me up on the roof, and there was a little penthouse up there, and it was empty. 17 Carrilla Road. She said, is 30 shillings a week too much?
I said, oh no, because I was paying £3.10 for bed and breakfast. So 30 shillings a week, but I was there for 10 years. Well, I fell in love with Cremorne Point the first time I ever came here.
Lex and Ruby's commitment to this area echoed earlier campaigns to preserve the beauty of the foreshore. James Milson Jr. bought Robertson's property in 1853, but when he tried to secure the shoreline for commercial purposes, his claim was contested in the courts. Milson lost, and the idea of creating parkland there took hold. Another threat to the area emerged as the possibility of coal mining was explored in the 1890s. As Arthur Streeton exhibited his acclaimed Cremorne Pastoral in 1895, the pro-mining lobby was losing its momentum.
And to have the path coming all the way around, and you can walk right around, and you can walk right around and cross over and go right around to the zoo. And it was the best thing they ever did, was to make it into a reserve and not let the houses be built right out to the point. Because if you look at places, have a look over there, see, where the houses come right down to the water's edge. See, and they had the forethought to make the path around there, and people couldn't build any further down near the water than they did.
In 1905, the reserve around the point was gazetted as a public park with North Sydney Council as the trustee. But now property development was placing great strains on the area. While private gardens flourished, rubbish and noxious weeds took over the foreshore reserve. Homeless people slept in the caves, and respectable residents did not venture there at night. North Sydney Council initiated a beautification campaign with the help of local residents, and by the end of the decade, Cinderella had been transformed into a fairy princess. However, the effects of depression in the 1930s, and perhaps the impact of World War II, led to another period of decline. When Ruby and Lex took over in 1959, the lantana and household rubbish had returned.
No, there were no trees there. It was all lantana and privet. There might have been a couple of the big ones. Cremorne Point was low-growing scrub, and the council made the path right out to the point of the lighthouse, and they planted the trees. See, there was not a single boat on Mosman Bay when we started that garden, not in front there, around further, there probably were. And then one came, and then look at it now. You couldn't see the rubbish because the lantana and that hit it all. And here, you could hardly walk through there. It was like a barrier. And Lex found an old pole off a TV antenna, and he bashed it down with that. And he stood and he broke it up bit by bit, and it went in the garden and it formed a lot of the beds, the lantana. In a corner of God's garden always shines a ray of sun, and somewhere in that garden hides a little imp of fun. You can hear the sound of a bird's happy tune, and flowers there with the fragrance bloom. A little smile hides behind a cloud. Just watch and soon it comes peeping out. All is not darkness, storm and rain. Look and find these things again. The sun, a flower, a smile, a bird. Then softly the voice of God is heard. Always been very aware it's council land. It's council land. And always been aware of it. We went down every day there for a while, and then we didn't work Saturday or Sunday because there were a lot of people about, and then we used to take Wednesday off. And the chappie used to come down with his swag, and he'd sleep there overnight because a big rock comes out and forms a sort of a cave, and he'd sleep in under there. He used to scare the devil out of me sometimes. I'd go down and he'd be there in his blankets and that. A lady used to enjoy walking through these gardens, so they put her ashes there. She asked if you could sprinkle them down there, and I said, in front of where they lived, and I said yes, and I knew her too. She was a lovely lady. And so, but the wind was blowing in the wrong direction. As she scattered the ashes, they come back all over the top of us. I've never forgotten that. We should have tested the wind first. This tree has been here since the beginning. You can see how it's worn smooth. Look at it. I can still see Lex standing against that when I used to sit on the log there when we came down and have a drink of an evening. Just before dusk, and just one drink we'd bring down. And it was lovely. Yeah, this is Lex's corner. And that's my seat where I sit there. Yes, I do that when I come down. I always bring a flower. And this maidenhair, he gave me this in a pot, and I had it up at the house. And he died in '88, and after he died, I brought it down and I planted it here, and it's still growing here. Lex loved bird's nest fern, and after he died, I planted a tree fern there for him, and would you believe it, behind it grew first that one and then that one. Isn't it funny? And he really loved them. Every time he saw them, he'd say, "Oh, we must get some of those bird's nest ferns." And after Lex died, I don't know what I would have done without the garden. I used to come down early and I'd bring my lunch, but I couldn't eat it. There are days I wake up, I don't want to go down there, and I say, "Get yourself moving," and I do. But once I get down there, I feel better. Did you know the old couple that did this? And I say, "Yes, very well." And Judith will say, "Don't be awful, this is really..."
No,
but I do, I say, "Yes, very well." Well, I do,
that.
I did.
I've known Ruby on and off since I was a kid, and when Lex died, I've become closer and gotten to know her better, and I'm her other pair of hands in the garden.
Judith is going to carry it on, I'm quite sure, aren't you? I regret a lot of things, but we all have our regrets. The noblest thing a man can do, someone once said, is to plant a tree which one day will give shade to someone he will never know. And I used to go down there after Lex died because I felt close to him. But lately, I just feel sometimes that I don't want to go down there because I'm not able to do what I did. I've got a wonderful person that helps me. And of course the North Sydney Council gardeners that work around, they're very good. I don't know, I think it's because I seem to be missing Lex more as I've got older, as if I could possibly miss him more than I did. But I notice more, probably because I'm older. Well, I'll say this is what people say to us when they walk through it. They find love and peace there. And I say to them, well, it was built on love of growing and nature and that sort of thing. That's how we continue to do it. And love of nature. It was great, the best thing that could have happened to both of us. It was, it really was. But we'd walk through it and we'd look at each other and say, did we do this? And when I look at it now, with all the tree ferns, over 150, and sometimes I go down the ferry, I go up to Bosman by the ferry from here around, and I look across at it. And I think, did we do that? No? And sometimes I feel that we shouldn't have done it, but then nobody stopped us.